All right, we got some big news involving the Texas Longhorns, obviously preparing for their massive college football playoff semifinal matchup against Washington. There's a report out of ESPN today highlighting an interesting development involving one key freshman for this Longhorns football team. Let's pull up the report from ESPN and then we will talk about more on the other side. All right, Texas quarterback Arch Manning has taken all the reps as the backup quarterback during practice for the college football playoff semifinal at the All-State Sugar Bowl. The first time this season he heads into the game as the number two player behind starter Quinn Ewers. When you get into the season, you don't always have the opportunity to get everybody the amount of reps you would like. So I think that's the biggest change for him. Texas offensive coordinator Kyle Flood said Friday in the first time he addressed the personnel change. We've got a ton of confidence in Arch. Flood continued. I think his progression throughout the year has been excellent. He's a real student of the game, and he approached it like that from the very beginning. So I think that probably this is the best thing for him and for us, the team, was that when that happened, it was very easy for him to just continue to do what he was doing because he never approached it like he was a third quarterback or the backup quarterback. He approaches everything like he's the starting quarterback. I think that's the key when you're in a reserve role for being ready when you're called upon. All right, a lot of words there from Floyd, but I think the big thing to focus on here is that Arch Manning is taking all of the reps as the number two quarterback. Here's why this is important for people who aren't too familiar with how bowl games practice are structured. Teams treat bowl games, especially a long delay like this, almost like spring ball, almost like training camp, where especially for the second and third team, you're putting guys in different situations. You're moving some third team guys up to second team, fourth team up to second team, moving some second team guys in the third team, trying different personnel groupings. That's why you'll get a lot of quarterback, usually, some guys who are like, kind of buried in the depth chart will get a lot of reps, sometimes as far as the second string guy in terms of bowl practices, because coaches like to use these practices while they're obviously preparing to win their bowl game, win their playoff matchup. In Texas's case, they really like to use these practices to develop these players. The fact that Arch Manning is literally taking all of the reps at the backup quarterback position is pretty bizarre. That doesn't happen very much. Usually the backup quarterback position, like I said, a lot of different guys get reps in there throughout the bowl offseason, throughout those practices. Arch Manning getting all of the reps, I think, is a big time indicator that they are preparing for him, not only to potentially replace Quinn Ewers if Ewers goes down over the next two games, but I think this is a sign that the Texas Longhorns have officially announced their starting quarterback for next season, and that guy's name is Arch Manning. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this report, but Texas fans, look, game of the year, obviously semifinal matchup. Give us your prediction. It's only a couple days away now. Final score, Washington versus Texas, in the comment section below. But Miles, what do you think of this report and just everything involving Arch Manning in Texas right now?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I like the prospect. I like that Manning's really getting all of the reps, his fair share. He's really kind of stuck in there. Obviously, Ewers is going to be the starter for this bowl game, so he's going to get the first team reps. But it's like you said, this is more of like a testing phase, a spring ball type era for Arch Manning, and I think it's really interesting because I think earlier on this season, before all of this, Ewers kind of talked about that he wanted to come back to Texas. But now in the interview, he also reiterated that he hasn't made his decision quite yet whether or not he's going to go to the NFL or stay at Texas. And either way, I do agree with what you're saying about Arch Manning. Potentially, we know this guy's got a high pedigree, and we know there's a lot of buzz around him. He's a very interesting, prospect to be the starter for this team. And I think if he keeps doing what he's doing, I think they like how he is a student of the game. I think they like how he prepares, like they said in the article. I think that Arch Manning could be the next year's starting quarterback for Texas, or at least work his way in there in very short time. He looks good in his first couple of bouts as a late series reliever. He looked like a very, very quality, competent guy to come in and start. And I think you want the best shot is to get him started early when you transfer over into your new division. I think you want to get Arch Manning used to the higher level competition, used to getting in there, playing with the big dogs as often as possible. But I think starting him out early as possible is going to be your best option. So not only do I think Arch Manning deserves it, he shows that he's qualified to be the starter for Texas. I think for Texas's long-term success, because whether Ewers stays or not, he's not going to be there after next year. He has no ability to. So getting Arch Manning rolling early, if he's ready and if he is able to be a starting caliber of quarterback for Texas, is going to serve them the best in the long run for this team.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said there, but I think one of the things that's interesting is that the last time I can remember a team like Texas, Final Four situation, that gives their backups, their number two quarterback, all the number two reps and has no one else interchange them was, I believe, I could be wrong here, so people can fact check me in the comments if I'm wrong. I believe it was Tua Tagovailoa in the 2018 after the 2018 season when Alabama was going to ended up playing Georgia in the national title game. When Alabama's starting quarterback Jalen Hurts got benched for Tua. Tua was famously a freshman the year, came back and won the game for the Alabama Crimson Tide, the national title. I think that's the last time that I've seen a situation like this. Again, it's strange to have no other player take backup reps at the quarterback position. We're talking like 10, 15 practices at this point. It is totally bizarre. It's unheard of unless you are preparing him to be the starting quarterback. I think it's likely next year, but I think they're also preparing him for maybe a Jalen Hurts Tua situation. Look, I'm not saying Ewers is going to play poorly, but I'm thinking more an injury concern because look, Ewers has had the injury bug a number of times. I think right now Texas is preparing Arch Manning, and you can see it from Flood's comments, to potentially step in as needed over the next 2 games and have a Tua-like impact like Tua did for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But I do think at this point that Ewers' career as a Longhorn is going to end in the month of January, whether they beat Washington or lose to Washington. I think they'll beat Washington by a lot. And then, of course, whatever happens after that. I think Arch Manning is the future of this Texas program. And look, credit to Sarkisian and company for recognizing that and giving him the biggest opportunity to be prepared for that moment. Because this is a Texas team, as they move to the SEC, they're going right into the fire right out the get-go. They can't have any development time. They can't have a month or two for Arch Manning to get his feet underneath them, and using these bowl practices to get him ready for that, I think it's a really smart move.
Yeah, Nick, and even at the end of this article, they talk about if Manning was pressed into action in the playoff. So they kind of address that. It's like at the very end. And they say, I think it would take him a little bit to get settled in, but once he gets settled in, they have full confidence that he would be able to be the guy. And because like you said, yours has had the injury bug. So even there, even in this article, even in the press conference, they have the talk about Arch Manning potentially coming in and being the starter during some portion of the college football playoff has been brought up, and they do trust him there. So I think what you're saying more and more seems like the real thing was what's actually going to happen. But, you never know what could happen. We could very well see Arch Manning be thrust into action during this college football playoff national championship run.